Right, in the last video I stopped here. I just closed the EGR map, and so this is the EGR map. Now I'm going to go and look for a few more maps, but one more at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change back to 2D view, and I could use, as I said before, that button, but it'll be there forever. I could use this one and run that across, but that will still take me a while to find a map. Or I can simply go to the right of the cursor there and I can jump a screen's worth at a time. Now you can see I'm being offered maps there from Winols, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for one that's reasonably recognizable. Right, now there's one. Now obviously I recognize it straight away, and if you do a bit of searching on the internet you may well recognize that one as well by going on chip tuning forums. Another giveaway to what it might be is this 8x16. 8x16 and 12x16 is often used for this type of map. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that one. You can see it's gone grey because it's been selected. It will be yellow when we've finished all the selections. Here it is. Now I'm going to click in the middle of it because I know what it is. This is the driver's wish or driver's requirement map. So I'm going to click on that. And I also know, if I move this over there, that these figures here represent injected quantity. In other words, I require the engine to rev faster to make the car go faster. So what I need is more fuel. So this information here is the output of more fuel. Now I have to think back to what we looked at in the other map. The EGR map gave a maximum value of 51. So I know that I'm looking for values in that region. So 7,000 is not in the region of 51. Now if I change 7,000, so if I say to myself, well okay, what shall I do? Shall I call this, instead of 1 I'll put 0.1. That changes it to 700. Still not good enough. So what if I change it to 0.01? Let's go back and have a look. Oh, well, what we've got here is we've got 70, we've got 46, 50, 51, 53. These sound like figures that could be milligrams per stroke. They do actually sound like figures that could be an amount of fuel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop back up to description, and in there I'm going to put IQ, simply because I'm too lazy to type injection quantity, and in there I'm going to put milligrams per stroke. Quick look round. Am I happy with what I've got there? Well, I could change it to make sure that this reads 70.0 at the moment, but I'm not going to bother at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that as it is so that I can get on with the X and Y axis. Now this is where I warned people on the last video, don't get too hung up on X and Y. It's easy to say to yourself, oh that must be the X or the Y, and then click on here. As a beginner I suggest you don't. What I suggest you do is you click on OK and get rid of it, and then when you want to look at one of the axes, then you do it by actually clicking on one of the axes. That way you won't muddle them up because it will open the correct one for you, and this is a lot safer when you first start out because you don't make silly mistakes. Now let's double click on that one, revs per minute. Now the thing is, do we believe that's revs per minute? Well, we had up to 54 last time and we believed it was engine speed and revs per minute. The bit we didn't believe was the factor offset. We changed it to 1, so I'm going to do that again. And we've got quite sensible looking revs per minute there, haven't we? We've got an idle area. This is probably something to do with idle, anywhere in the region of 1,000 revs per minute, and we've got a maximum which is, while being a little bit too high, is up in the right area. We wouldn't really want to rev our engine regularly at that sort of number, but it's up in the right region, so that seems fairly reasonable. Now again, I could go to the x-axis because that would give me the other axis, but I'm not. I'm going to accept that. Not going to touch the precision. I'm just going to ignore that and it will stay as no decimal points. So I'm going to leave that like that, and I'm going to go and look at this one. Now what's happened here, is that it's auto put in some information for me already. Now if I go to this one, what it's done is it's put in percentage accelerator pedal, and it's put percentage sign in there. Now those are correct, that's what that is. And down here it's put in 0.01, which is correct because it's trying to convert a number to a percentage. So in other words, this number, if I move that, let's just close that a minute. If I move that down to here, if I change that to text, I'll just click delete, so that's gone. If I look on here and look at the maximum values I had, look at it, went 100, 400, 1000, 2500 and so on, and it finished at 10,000, but now it finishes at 100. And that's because I've accepted 0.01 as my factor, and that has changed this 10,000 into 100. Now, had Winols not done that for me, I would have had to do that, but it's done it for me. So if I go back to look at that, yes, I'll accept that as being the percentage accelerator pedal. That's how much I'm pressing the pedal. The unit, there isn't a unit as such, is there? We'll just call it a percentage. I'll accept 0.01 and I'll ignore precision again, because I don't care if you compress the pedal 92.4%. I'm quite happy to live with the sorts of figures I've got there as rounded up numbers. One thing that's worth noting, every time you've got a properties box, you've got a box for comments. You can put any comment you like in here to remind you about what you've done. When you first start doing this, if I was you, I would do exactly that. I would put a few comments in here telling yourself exactly what you did and why you did it. That will never do you any harm, because if at a future date you get stuck, you can always go back and look at maps you've done in the past and see what comments you made, and you might just find a comment that helps. Right, again, no, I'll just put that back on map, but again, we'll just get rid of that now. So what we've got then is we've got our second map. We've got an address for it, we've given it a name, Driver's Wish, and we can say, yep, that's absolutely fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do something else while we're here before I end this video. I'm going to right click on there, because if you remember back to the first one of these that I was talking about, I was talking about changes that you could make. And if I right click, I get some choices here, but one of them of course is I can open the properties box, but we've seen that one before. But what I can do is, this is this X and Y business. Here are the axes that were labelled X and Y, but if you notice I've got here a choice to swap axis. If I click on swap axis, it's just swapped them round and I've got a totally different view. This one has gone from being up here to down here, and the one that was here, which was revs per minute, is now up there. If I go back, swap axis again, it's back how I wanted it to look before. So don't ever get hung up on what is X and what is Y, because it's entirely up to how you set the thing out in the first place. And the other thing that I mentioned was this business of parallel maps. If I go back to here, what we've got here is parallel maps. If I click on parallel maps, I will get the option to look for parallel maps. Now you get a choice here of how much degree of similarity you want. Now I suggest you don't change that, because what you're always going to be looking for is the same map somewhere else. You're not going to want the same map somewhere else that's almost the same, not when you're a beginner. So what I suggest you do is you look and you only ever accept what are in effect identical maps. And so what it's done is it's found a potential map at 6D222. Now, one way you can check in your own mind, is this likely, is go over and have a look at the address of the map you've got. Very often when people design these hex dumps, they put things in a parallel position in terms of number as well. So in other words, look, we've got 4D222 and the designers have just jumped forward to a blank space further in the file, but they've gone not to some random spot, but they've gone to 6D2222. Right, so that seems likely that it is exactly the same map but in a different place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to accept that. Now I can ignore these boxes simply because most of the things are not involved because I haven't been making any kinds of changes. So what I actually want to be changed is the map in its entirety. So keep the data all the same and in sync. The axis descriptions and the map name, obviously I would like those to go as well. So I'm just going to say OK. And so now I have got two of those maps. I've got a driver's wish map, which is the one I'm currently looking at, and I've got a parallel version of that driver's wish map. And to prove that, I can double click, and here we are. Here's the other version. The other one's trying to hide down there. And if I look at the hex dump above, the hex dump has automatically jumped to where the other version is. Now there is a reason why it's jumped to that, which I'll come to a later date, but it's automatically jumped there, and there it is in yellow as being already in my maps. So I've got the two and the information is the same in both of them. So I'll just click those and get rid of them. And you can see this again because if I click on the 2D version, you should be able to see, yeah, there I am. You see, look, I'm now in the second block. And yet this is the block we were working in. So I've actually got a map in the other block. And I could do the same with the EGR map. I could go back and do that for that one. And I can do that at any time. Right, now if I click on that one, it will take me back to there. And at a later date, I will explain why Winols is doing that. Winols won't always do that. That's a setting that you can set. But for the moment, I will stop there.